Let's go, I see people. All right, today's live stream, we've got Mike Schwartz online with us, and founder of ORIGYN. And so, Mike, so great to have you here. Thanks for taking the time. How are you doing today?
I'm great. It's great to be here. Nice to see you. Nice to see you all. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to chatting.
Awesome. And one of my favorite parts of these live streams is actually the parts that are offline, getting to meet incredible people like yourself and just chit chat a little bit before and after. And for our audience, I want to continue the conversation we had just started before the live stream, which was I think something that resonates with all of us, and that's keeping the faith during the tough parts of a bear market cycle. And so you're talking about kind of the Gartner hype graph. Would you maybe like review that for the audience, because I think this is something that we don't really want to miss. And then we'll go into your talk, which is really exciting. There's a lot of you dropped a lot of alpha things that I'd never heard of, that I didn't know that ORIGYN was getting involved with, and I think that would be really exciting for the audience to learn about. But before that, let's talk about kind of like where we are in the bear market and how to keep the faith.
Sure. Happy to. So, yeah, we were talking a little bit about something called the Gartner hype cycle or hype curve, and it's been around for a little while now, and we tend to forget about it while we're in the midst of upswings. Mm-hmm. It's proven to be a pretty accurate depiction of how new technologies typically go. So you start off with this innovation trigger, and then you have this sort of incredible incline and excitement, and you reach this peak of inflated expectations, as they call it, which unfortunately typically precedes this enormous decline as we have this large number of projects which are struggling to find product market fit and real value proposition. We decline into a trough of disillusionment, it's called, which is where we are right now, which feels terrible to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But the great news is that always precedes this re-incline into the slope of enlightenment, where we call it plateau of productivity, where real value starts to work with real commerce, real consumers, and the real winners emerge. So right now, even though it feels bad, we're right at the point before that real value is discovered, and that's when the real winners are formed. And it's the worst place you could possibly jump off the curve.
Yeah.
Put all that effort in, you've traversed that curve, you're right here in this tough time. It's tough to get through it, but it's the last place on that curve you want to drop off. It's like selling at the bottom. It's akin to that.
Oh, yeah. And I think, at the conference specifically, I think because of where we are in the bear cycle, it was just like this feeling of fresh air. Like everyone came up for a breath because we could feed off of each other's enthusiasm, because all of the builders in the space, like this is a hard grind. This is really hard, but we're at the start of an industry, just, barely scratching the surface of product market fit and true value creation. And it can emotionally take a toll. So like when we're able to like see people that we respect, who are smart, that also have enthusiasm, and we could feed off of that and kind of help each other through that. That was great. And then since the conference, I've been talking to a lot of the people who are at the conference, and I've been feeling the struggle like weigh on them again. And I think, particularly they've noticed these last couple months have been extra hard in the ecosystem. Trough of disillusionment seems to fit the bill. I mean, and how are you internally within ORIGYN, like kind of keeping the faith and keeping the fight during this really pivotal time?
Well, I mean, most of the folks within ORIGYN have been working together for quite some time, and in fact, some of us have worked together since 2015.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Really, it's sticking to your knitting, right? And we've stuck to our original thesis and vision, and really, this is the time. The way you get out of that trough of disillusionment is you mentioned it, you've got to be on a relentless search for product market fit, and that means delivering real value to market. So differentiated value that is good enough for en masse market take up, right? So that's really the test now. And so are we good enough, each of us, with our projects? and to remain laser focused on that, regardless of what fluff or hype is going on in the background. And we all know there's a hell of a lot of it in Web3.
Oh, yeah.
They're laser focused on delivering differentiated value into whatever area you're pursuing and proving that product market fit that's in a way that's good enough to bring en masse take up. Now, we've chosen more of a B2B route than a B2C route for various reasons, and I talk a little bit about that in the talk. There are different pros and cons to selecting either route. But there's, if you go after industry and you sign big industry, you typically get thousands, if not millions, of consumers almost for free because they already have customers.
Yeah.
So them a value proposition they can feed into their own presence in market, then you don't have to solve that problem. Now, that's a huge problem for B2C projects, getting that market take up. And it's very expensive and time consuming as well. And it's quite high risk. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not a good idea, but you really have to think about what you're focusing on and why, and go after that very determinedly and doggedly and not be distracted by the fluff or the hype.
Yeah, I agree. And, I feel like over the past couple of months in my own journey of understanding, I've come to appreciate ORIGYN's approach a lot more. Because at the beginning, it was like, oh man, I wish I heard more about them. I wish I knew more of what was going on. I think some of the others in the ecosystem felt that way. But then as I got to really like see what you're doing at the conference, and as I really thought about it, like the path forward for the IC, because I think that we all came into this and like, wow, we can finally make applications that are competitive with Web2 for the first time. And then a lot of people have been disheartened because like the rest of Web3 hasn't really been as excited about this tech as we would have hoped. We're not seeing the same kind of like enthusiasm coming from the EVM crowd. They kind of stay in their bubble. And we've seen some great examples of people breaking into it with ICP, like D-Mail and others. But at the end of the day, like Web3 is still not really producing strong value for the world. And that's why there's so much volatility and there's a lot of hot air. There's a lot of, people say, oh, ICP, you're not decentralized enough. And then they use Binance Smart Chain, and which is like a private EVM. But what you're really doing is focusing relentlessly on providing real value for the world and talking to the people within Web2, like going to a Web2 market. I mean, within Code State, I've kind of catalyzed that lately as like, we really need to be thinking about how do we build dApps that target a Web2 market, not like selling decentralization, the centralized version of X. That's not going to work, right? Because it's going to take a while for mainstream users to care about decentralization. I believe that will happen, and that's important. But what you're doing is, hey, here's something that matters to you. Here's real world true value that Web2 can't compete with. You may or may not care that Web3 is used in the background, but the point is you do care about this, and we can provide it. And I think that, like, ultimately, it's just like that's really what we need. And so I really respect that approach, and it feels like it shows your kind of the maturity of ORIGYN's thinking in that. And you had mentioned that a little bit in your roadmap is going to include some precious metals and gemstones. Maybe you can, I know you can't share everything, but maybe you can share a little bit about that, Drexen.
Love to. And a lot of what you said is spot on, Isaac. So it takes a long time to do real Web3 stuff well, as you know. It's complex. It's difficult. We've been, as I said, 2015, that's 8 years ago. Now, we've been working with some of the largest industry players in a number of industries for more than a year. We haven't been talking about it. We've been building heavily, heads down. And in the next couple of months, you're going to hear about those things. And they're very real. They're very real partners. They're very real value propositions. There's very real volume. And so, yes, you're right. Gemstones, precious metals are key among them. We're still working in luxury goods, watches. So there's some very exciting things coming up. We obviously work with 100% made in country stuff too with Fed Italy. So there's some real value propositions coming out, and we can talk about those more publicly very soon. But I can assure everyone on this call that those things are very real, and it's taken a lot of time to find that product market fit and to get that value proposition to market And as you said, we're not really talking about decentralization or Web3, not really much about NFTs either. We have an incredible next generation NFT standard, which can do extraordinary things, largely thanks to the internet computer. But we don't really go and talk about that. We talk about value that can't be attained through any other Web 1, Web 2 enterprise SaaS cloud service, right? That's value that cannot be delivered through that other infrastructure. It's value that a consumer or a business can understand very clearly in plain English. And that takes time, takes effort. It's really tough to cut through, as we all know, the noise and the fluff and the shilling in this industry, unfortunately, and some of the bad actors. But we've chosen to just keep our heads down and keep going and focus on delivering that value. Sometimes maybe a bit too much, to be honest. Maybe we should talk a little bit more about it. But if you make me choose, I'm going to choose on focusing on delivering the value, and hopefully in a couple of months' time, you're all going to see great examples of that.
No, that's exciting. I mean, what matters at the end of the day is creating something real with Web3 and burning cycles. So let's do it. I respect it. I'm so excited to see how you do that, and to get more information myself, because I actually I'm a big fan of precious metals myself. It feels to me very analogous to crypto. It's all about ownership. You have true ownership. A bank can't take it away from you. It's the same thing as you're holding a physical piece of gold or silver. So there's combining the two makes so much sense, and I think that's a fantastic use case to explore. So I'd love to learn more about that. But without further ado, let's jump into the very first, made public recording of your conference talk. I think the audience is going to learn a lot, and I'm excited to have them go into it. And for those listening, be sure to ask questions in the YouTube chat, and we'll bring those questions up on stage and have Mike answer them just after the recording here. So, let's go back in time to May and see what you've got to share with us. A lot of new info in here.
Thanks.
Sounds good.
Keep that going. We're going to welcome Mike Schwartz from ORIGYN Foundation up to the stage to tell us about migrating your global commerce to Web3. Mike, come on up here.
Hi, great to be here. Seems like a pretty audacious title, doesn't it, or objective? It was actually conjured in 2015, and Web3 wasn't really spoken about then. It was probably translate to migrating global commerce to open decentralized infrastructure, but now we can call it Web3. It was a big goal, but I'm here today to tell you that this is already well underway, perhaps surprisingly so. Hopefully by the end of this little talk, you might have renewed confidence that it is not only well underway, but something that everybody in this room, this community, is actually the community that I think is going to do this. And does that sound scary? Does that sound impossible? Does that sound like you couldn't possibly be part of that? Well, it shouldn't, because you can and you are and you will. And let's talk about it. I'm going to share a few stories and show you a few photographs, so you can hopefully stay awake for the first half. And then we'll show you some real stuff. Okay, talk about motivation, how we learned to pitch and how we pivoted, and how we're now capitalizing on all of that 8 years of stuff that's gone on. I grew up in Sydney. That photograph was taken the year I was born, so yeah, I've been around a while. I grew up in a single-parent family. We didn't have any money, but we had lots of love. I didn't really understand at the time that being wealthy in love gives you a lot of confidence to go out into the world and feel safe. You always have a base to go back to. So while I was out there in the world exploring all the inequalities and disadvantages that one might encounter coming from that basis, I always felt very confident and safe. And as I was out there kind of observing the world when I was young and not so young, observed a few things which sort of shaped why I'm doing this now and why I'm here, perhaps why some of you are here. I observed that some start with more than others. Life isn't always fair for us all, even those who start with a lot more than others. Healthy competition is not the same as taking advantage of those who are less fortunate, even though some people like to pretend it is. Injustice seems pretty pervasive. Human frailty is very real. Neglecting rising inequity can lead to catastrophic things. It's okay to be rewarded for good work. If you're not, then you probably won't do good work. So it's okay, you don't feel guilty about that. Finding work that fascinates you is really cool, and probably a lot of people in this room have already hit that spot by being part of this community. But finding work with purpose is really huge, and I'm going to talk about that too. Down the bottom, a couple of things that really worry me. Power and money combined with proprietary data and tech, presenting significant new risks for all of us, I think for humanity. And related to that, our systems of governance are becoming increasingly inadequate. Okay, my first fascination was data. I sat around drawing data models like this one. And I became particularly fascinated with moving structure into content and pushing that envelope as far as possible. This is a long time ago, mind you. Not quite so that we had a thing and a thing relationship, but how close could we get to that? So if we put data structure into content, it was much more malleable and dynamically changeable, which was a competitive advantage. So I spent time drawing models and doing early work in and around financial services, and got to the point where I wanted to draw models that of entire data architectures that would run global financial systems. That ended up taking me to this place. Don't hold it against me. I was just fascinated by data and just ended up there. I was running data architecture for all of funds management there, and Goldman was also a place where database replication was effectively invented, unbeknown to many people. And that, many of you may know that means you've got a single primary at the core, and you pump that out to the replicas all over the world within milliseconds. And you can do local reads out there, and you do remote writes, and it's pretty powerful architecture. Really bastardized stored procedures to read the logs and pump the data out to those replicas. That was a very interesting thing to be involved in. But there's a lot of complexity involved in getting that architecture right. You've got to replicate the replicas. You've got to do backups. You've got to do failovers when things go wrong. You've got to recover them when you get things right again. That'll cost a lot of money. It's very complex. In fact, there's data around that suggests it's about 85% of your IT and ops budget. So if you've got a $3 or $4 billion budget a year, that's a lot of money that you're spending on stuff which has nothing to do with business models or user experience. Complexity also breeds security vulnerabilities. So the problem just compounds. So that was a big part of my background and basis and understanding how that works and living with it and designing it. I went back to Sydney, had a couple of amazing kids who I love dearly, and so that I could come home a bit earlier at night and more often, I started doing startups there. I did some consulting, did some more big industry stuff, again in banking and telecommunications. And then as my kids got a bit older, I got a bit bored of that stuff, and I heard about this organisation, Digital Ventures, that was starting out related to BCG. So I went and ran Asia for Digital Ventures, and obviously was running around a lot of different countries there, building new ventures. How did that work? Well, BCG would take us into the boardrooms, and we would meet the executive suite, and we would leverage their balance sheets, customer bases, distribution channels to create new startups that would be attackers and create unfair advantages for those attackers. We do things like build an online bank. And I remember one example in particular where we put a pretty big team in place, built this thing. It had a market cap of a couple of billion not long after launch. And in return for that, we were to get 9.6 million in fees and a bunch of equity. So that was the model for that business. However, in this particular example, the country will remain unnamed for this example. I was called into the head guy's office a couple of weeks before launch. And he said, okay, you guys can go now. Here's $2 million, no equity. And if you want to sue us, you can join the queue because we're friends with the Prime Minister and, this is what we do for a living. It was also a country where I would typically land about midnight or 1 a.m. and I'd get a car from the airport into the city, and I'd constantly go past these gangs of kids who are 6 or 7 years old running around at the streets at midnight. I'd look out the window feeling pretty awful in my nice car, looking at these poor kids. And, I came to realize these guys didn't sneak out of their homes. This is how they lived. So this is another thing that sort of shaped why I'm doing this now, is seeing this kind of corruption. If systems allow people to screw one another, too often they will, right? So the systems are the problem here quite often, especially when you put it against the background of this vulnerability around human frailty. Okay, so out of that stuff, I talked about fascination and then purpose. I conjured a purpose which was incredibly meaningful and has driven me over the last 8 years without flinching an inch, no matter what obstacle has come up. The purpose is so meaningful and I'm so sure about it that nothing's going to stop me, and nothing's going to stop the team. And I don't think anything's going to stop anyone in this community, because I think there's a fair few shared values here. So what was it? Again, migrating global commerce to open decentralized infrastructure for the collective benefit of those three giant aspects of society. Transparent, tamper-proof, programmatic, trustworthy, more people participating in the global economy, better distribution of wealth and power, more hope for more people, so less French revolutions. Okay, next thing I discovered, the open decentralized layer 1 protocol that could scale, perform, and had built-in governance didn't exist. So that was a bit of a shame, bit of an impediment straight up there. Ethereum had just launched, but it wasn't there, and it still isn't, let's face it. So in my job, I was running around the world a lot, and I decided to sort of use that job to find out where this protocol might be or where it might come from. And I kept ending up back in Palo Alto, no matter where I went on this search. And in fact, led me, for example, one weekend at this eerie hotel in Half Moon Bay, where you might imagine that you'd find Rosemary's Baby in your bedroom, but she wasn't there. These guys were. I'm going to show some pictures of a few people here historically, many of whom are in this room, or have been over the last couple of days. You can see Tom Saris there at the front. I met Tom way back then. This is 2015. Tom introduced me to Dom, actually. There's Nick Szabo there, Bill Glyam. So we do things like go and do weekends at this place and draw on the whiteboard and think about where this stuff could go. And that was a while ago. Then I was still at Digital Ventures, and I thought, I need to create a vehicle that's fit for purpose here, that's fit for this journey to not just create startups that are companies, but to create these new kinds of organizations and still try and leverage that access to the industry leaders and the corporates. So it was kind of a sleight of hand to create this thing called DVolution, spin it out of Digital Ventures, and then get clusters of industry leaders to help anchor partner or seed these open, decentralized, and tokenized pan-industry platforms or ecosystems. And of course, that was a pretty large ambition and undertaking too. So just seemed to be a habit at that point. I started to coerce unsuspecting engineers who were in and around my organization. And there you can see Rick over in the back there with his nice noggin. Peter Bora, Tiani Lee, some of these guys, that's where it all started for them. We started DVolution and started to try and convert really awesome engineers to this wonderful new dark side. We did Dapathons. If you look very carefully, you'll see Austin there. David Fan, Kevin Seagraves. That's where I met and found those people running Dapathons. So this is quite a long time ago. But we still didn't have this layer 1 protocol. We had great conversations. Dom was the only one amongst that group of people that I showed previously and a broader group who was not only articulating the same problems around scalability and performance and governance, but he already had a bunch of ideas about how to conjure solutions to those problems in ways that could coexist feasibly. So from the start, for me, Dom was really the only one that I could work with. No one else was even purporting to try to do what I needed and what Dom was already down the path of thinking about doing. So what we did have was 2 fledgling teams. You know, I met Artia and a bunch of other people around those early days with Dom and Timo. We had 2 fledgling teams, and we were kind of built. Dom was doing the layer 1 stuff, and I was trying to work on this pan-industry stuff to layer on top of the layer 1. So we just got on with kind of pitching to big industry anyway, even though we didn't have everything in place. So what happened? I started grabbing Dom and shoving him on an aeroplane whenever I could. We went to Australia, we went to Hong Kong, we went to London, we went all over the place. And we pitched and pitched and pitched. And at the beginning, they were like, oh, you know, this is really interesting stuff. You guys are kind of nutcases. Come back, you know, a couple of years if you ever figure anything out, right? But it slowly got better. Eventually, we ran into this guy. He's Bruce Cleaver. He was the CEO of De Beers at the time, and he's now the chairman. And some lessons here. So 35% of global throughput per annum. Fantastic anchor partner, right at the head of a value chain. So if you're going to track something or trace it, you're going to do provenance. Starting with huge volume at the start of the value chain is a good candidate, and huge market share. Also, and this speaks to something that ORIGYN learned more recently, some industries have the hardware completely sorted out. What am I talking about when I'm talking about hardware? We've done a lot of R&D, as many of you will know, with luxury goods and watches. We've built robots, we've built desktop boxes, we've done a lot of R&D with cell phones and macro lenses. That's all cool, and that's all getting better and better all the time, and soon it'll be all on the phone. Very soon, actually. But when an industry already has all the hardware sorted out, like the diamond industry, look at those machines there. They have outlets everywhere, machines everywhere. They already scan diamonds. They weigh them down to 4 decimal places. They scan 3 dimensions. They bounce light off the diamond. They scan for inclusions. They get all that stuff done, and they can just pass you the data. That's low-hanging fruit, and it's 35% of global production through one organization. So how do you actually get them on the hook? This is what we pitched. Digital twins of real-world physical assets that can weave a steel thread of provenance, identification, and authenticity throughout the value chain. So through next-generation NFTs, which Austin and his team have now framed up absolutely brilliantly. A retort to, at the time, the synthetic stone growers who campaigned against De Beers saying, hey, you're overpriced, you're environmentally unsustainable, and you're raping and pillaging people in the environment, which they put a lot of work into not doing that. But the common retort against them from that part of the industry was that they were still doing it. So they need to be able to go back to the source and prove that in places where they were digging diamonds out of the ground, quality of life was improving, people were living a higher standard of living, and so on and so forth. So the bedrock for a host of value-adding services, which I'm going to talk more about shortly. This is huge, and this is a massive advantage of the internet computer. Value-adding services that unlock new revenue streams and growth corridors out of your existing inventory, which again are going to exist entirely on-chain inside a next-gen NFT, inside a canister. An open pan-industry platform. So you're going to seed, De Beers, an open platform for the industry. But we don't wholly own nor control the assets that we're creating. You are going to participate in governance of that platform. There's no supplier-buyer relationship here. ORIGYN's a foundation. We're not a for-profit company. It's okay. You're safe. We're not going to be Salesforce or SAP. We're not going to screw you. We can't. By design, we can't do that. Open source, inspectable, decentralized, therefore tamper-proof code base with everything on-chain. So it's trustworthy. That's what we pitched. And when you think about it, back then in 2017, that was a pretty extraordinary thing to pull off. There is the executive committee of De Beers right there in one of the many workshops we had over a long period of time. That's actually Dominic, There's Dominic hiding right over there. I think Rick's hiding over there. There's a bunch of other people. I don't know if any of you know Henning Diedrich is there. Austin was there somewhere. David was there. So this is a long time ago. And that was the first attempt, really, at coercing big industry across to this infrastructure that we're all in love with today. We did manage some early success. It was the world's first attempt at a major industry-led open decentralized pan-industry platform. We tracked the diamonds from mine to finger, uniquely identifying stone from provenance and authentication, digital twins, built on Ethereum. So therefore it didn't scale, it couldn't perform. We had offline traditional governance, so there's a bit of competition around the board table again, not great. And we had to focus on exceptional stones, which is low volume, high value. So ultimately that fell back to a private chain derivative and De Beers only. However, they are about to open it back up again, which is great. At the same time, BCG said to me, hey, this is cool, this stuff you're doing, but tokens, not sure about these token things that you want to kind of create and share with the likes of De Beers. We're a cash in, cash out business. We like to pay big bonuses at the end of the year, and this token thing is just not really cool. So if you want to do these token things, you should do it outside this organization. I said, I do want to do these token things, so I'll go outside of the organization. So I created this thing called 55 Foundry. I thought, okay, great, we can pursue tokenization with full commercial and contractual freedom. But if you'll all remember how long it was before the internet computer was actually launched into production, it kind of went on. Do you remember that Dr. Seuss book, The Places You'll Go? Remember The Waiting Place? That was kind of like what it was like for a little while, right? Keeping an organization really focused and aligned on that mission and vision through a period like that is really tough. You've got to have real believers when you go through the dark days. People who are really committed to that vision and that mission. Because if you are obsessively committed to that, the alignment won't falter. If you do have some people in your organization that are not, who might be just chasing money, then they'll easily falter, right? So that was a tough period, and our alignment became skew-if in that organization from time to time, coupled with the fact that we were in the US and there were sort of growing regulatory risks around what we wanted to do. So again, kind of stopped that. Created ORIGYN with a couple of other guys, Vincent Perrier and Jean Boxler, many of you who might know from his deep involvement in Dfinity, involvement on the council there. So it's a Swiss-based foundation, so therefore FINMA aligned, not SEC. It's tokenized, it has an open source mantra. So after all of these iterations, we finally have the right vehicle. And it's about a whole lot of things. It's about a whole lot of tech. It's also about its legal definition, the regulatory compliance, the commercial model, all of those things. It takes a long while to figure all this stuff out. But, we've figured a lot of it out. So if you want to know how we did it and how things work, feel free to ask if you want to sort of try and replicate some of it, the way you set yourselves up. So ORIGYN is really about building trust in what's most valuable. But truth is, for me at least, it's a Trojan horse for that subtext down there, which is the topic that this presentation is about. Okay, so 8 years. This is a different kind of 8-year gang since Half Moon Bay. Lots of conviction and perseverance and resilience and some madness, of course, as you can probably all relate to that. And we're building on the internet computer for very good reasons. Okay, so now it's time to capitalize. We believe we've built the most powerful digital certificate in the world. Again, many thanks to Austin and his team for defining an incredible next generation standard, and it's brought to life by this perpetual operating system. Again, we're a foundation. Everything we do is destined for open source status. I would urge you to think about using that perpetual OS, that standard. We're not a company, it's not supplier buyer. It's there for you to use and leverage. You don't have to build all that stuff yourself. Leverage it and let's all accelerate one another simultaneously. we've built minting studio. So you can mint digital twins through an API call, through a batch load, or by getting into a user interface for high value assets. And you can actually create new templates dynamically for new asset classes with different attributes. And it will handle those and then mint digital twins of those for you. It creates digital certificates. And there's a vault for you to inspect those things as well and manage and maintain them. What many people don't know, and this is a pretty cool slide, we're already working in multiple industries. In many respects, we've flown under the radar, but we're definitely going to be coming out in the next 6 months or so. We're doing really cool pilots with diamonds and gemstones again, with big grading companies, one of the world's largest grading companies at the core, with 6 or 7 others involved, and they do about 3 million certificates a year. Right? Industry will bring you volume. Right? B2C is a perfectly reasonable strategy to follow in terms of trying to get your business, your effort to market and have it scale and become successful. But industry, if you can snare industry, don't be afraid of industry. Don't be afraid to pitch to industry. If you snare big industry, you'll get millions and millions and millions of customers for nothing. They've already got them. But if you can convince industry, it's a very, very efficient way for you to get a lot of users. Okay, so with gemstones, we're working with those guys. Many of you will see, that's not public yet. That will be public very, very shortly as we move to production. Probably only, well, that's public. Federal Italy's public. So we're working with Italy to certify the procurement and manufacturing processes for which is up to 350,000 organisations in the country which have goods that are 100% made in Italy. We have 2 other countries in Europe at the table right now. We have a pitch to the EU, I think in July. We have another large economy in South America at the table. So that's a real growth corridor right there. It also gives us access to all the certified member companies. So there's millions upon millions upon millions of products to be certified within those companies as well. Many of you know we already power fractionalized art through platforms like Yumi. And the astute among you will have noticed that there was a precious metal soft launch this month around gold and creating NFTs from real gold bars that are housed in a vault under a bank in Switzerland, and they are audited by KPMG once every 3 months. So these NFTs are 100% perpetually backed by real gold bars, and they always will be. In something like 6 to 8 to 10 to 12 weeks, something like that, we will be placing those inside. You can lock those in a DAO, those NFTs, and then the DAO will mint a bunch of gold tokens. So the chain of custody says that those tokens will always be perpetually 100% backed by real gold. Hopefully you don't release this talk for another 2.5, 3 weeks, because not supposed to be talking about that until we do the PR for it. But anyway, there's a sneak peek of what's coming. We're working with a bunch of other industries as well right now, which I won't mention. So there's about 3 or 4 others. So when I said the name of this speech here, this talk, and I said, hey, you might be surprised that this is already really happening, I wasn't kidding. This is already really happening. We are migrating global commerce through big industry to Web3, and it's all on the IC. Now, you guys can do this too. You can be a part of this. This room, this community is leading this charge for real. And you can do it too. You can be a part of it. Okay, this slide is almost the last one. It's a little wordy, but I just want to summarize the pitch to big industry. Right? Okay. A pan-industry platform that no one wholly owns nor controls. Leverages of an open source and decentralized utility code base with everything on chain, so it's trustworthy. Transparent, tokenized, programmatic governance. No single company owns underlying IP or trade secrets. No proprietary software exists. No traditional supplier-buyer relationship exists. No buyer lock-in or platform risk exists. You know, these are companies that are sick of that. And when they do their intergenerational platform upgrades, they're looking for this stuff now. They're wise enough to look for it. The cost, their overall cost can go down. Security gets better. This stuff is getting greener, the IC. I mentioned that stat before. Strip out 85% of your IT and ops cost. No backup, failover, recovery, content distribution networks, firewalls. That stuff is gone. It's baked into the protocol. Almost incorruptible data in perpetuity. Core use cases, provenance, identification, authentication. If we can put extraordinary amounts of data inside this next-gen NFT, entirely in canister, that means not just high-resolution images and 3D volumetric video entirely within NFT. That also means entire dApps, like a marketplace dApp, a self-sovereign object. It also means that if I'm pitching to a corporate, I can put a box over here and I can describe all of this value, differentiated value. So let's go back to diamonds for a moment. Today, the biggest grading companies distribute PDFs for a diamond they've graded. Paper, as well as a QR code to pull up a PDF on your screen. Those are just old static artifacts, right? Compare and contrast, now we preload a digital certificate, tamper-proof one, inside a vault on your phone as a dApp, and the buyer simply receives that. The diamond grading company can offer to its customers, like Macy's or Costco or whoever, it can either offer directly to market or through its customers a bunch of other value-adding services inside that NFT. Proof of ownership, insurance, warranties, lost and stolen alerts, appraisal history, service records, bequeathals, heritage data. You can go on and on. These are all real services, and they can all be embedded inside the NFT, inside the digital certificate, inside the vault. And so Costco or Macy's, whoever, can reach those customers and they can upsell a whole bunch of new value-added services. So if you can describe that to a corporate, to an industry leader and say, here's some new value. Would you like some new revenue streams? Would you like some new growth corridors out of your existing inventory? Would you like that without having to sign up for another Salesforce or SAP? Would you like to be in control of the platform? Would you like to be cheap? Would you like to be incredibly secure? And the answer is yes, of course. I think I'm out of time, so I'll hurry up. The answer is yes. And then next statement really is, well, okay, great, you want that differentiated value. Well, that needs to be deployed on Web3, not this Web2 stuff. So let's just get on with it. Okay, let's get on with it. I haven't even talked about blockchain or tokens at that point, maybe a little bit around governance. But that's it. So that's your pitch, all on chain. The great big rocks, lessons learned from many decades of working, probably a few more decades than a couple of you. What needs to stay non-negotiable with your venture, with your dream and your ambition? Your vision and your mission, that's got to be a rock, right? Come up with it, and if it's got purpose, all the better. Purpose to you. And then the alignment of all of your resources to that. Those simple things, you keep those as your rocks, hard and fast. What is pivotable along the way, and it doesn't matter if people say, where's your box? What's happening with watches, right? You can change your strategy, you can change your tactics, and you can adjust your product market fit. In fact, you have to, and you should. And as long as those things are being pivoted to make sure that you're optimizing your pathway to delivering on that vision and mission, that is absolutely, it's better than fine. It's what you should be doing and what you have to do. So those are your rocks. So we really are doing this. We're doing it right now. As you can see, it's already happening, and it's happening on the IC. And you are part of the community that's going to deliver on this, right? We are going to deliver on this. This small group of people here and beyond this room in this community are going to deliver on this mission. We already are. And we're just about to pass a tipping point where there's no point of return. So I hope you join me on the journey, us on the journey. Let's help one another to get there wherever we can. Any initiative in this room, any person on any journey here where we can use one another's services, there's a whole lot of stuff you can get out of calling Origin services. You don't have to build all that stuff, right? It's already built for you. There's many examples like that in this room. So let's help one another out and do that.
Woo! Man, that pumped me up more than my coffee this morning. That's great.
That's the next thing I'll do, a coffee.
No, that was, I mean, I really hope that Web3 builders are listening, because not only have you set a great example in the focus for product market fit and really just the strategy, the approach. Like, I think it's actually genius going after, I mean, you really sold me on, because I was wondering, like, is enterprise the route for crypto? But I mean, it is, because I worked in enterprise. I've worked at Hewlett Packard corporate and AT&T corporate, and their vendors are terrible. They're just notoriously horrible. Like big enterprises pit up with really horrible services all the time, and we can provide a better service through the power of Web3. So not only did you do a great job there, but I love in your presentations, like just the presentation format. I mean, you're a great storyteller. You share a bit about yourself, and you share your purpose and your passion. That sets the tone for this incredible journey. And you take us like I love seeing those photos of the OGs back in the day. And I think that conference itself is going to be, the photos from the conference is going to be, 8 years from now, the next 8-year gang. That would be, kind of seen as a reflection point. So just on behalf of the ecosystem, thank you for being a part of it, and thank you for all the contribution that you're making. And yeah, I really hope that they're listening, because you're kind of providing something that's been missing, I think, for Web3.
Well, thank you. I'm just super excited about where we all are, where the infrastructure is, and what's possible with it. So, folks, use it. It is an extraordinary advantage, this layer 1 protocol, the internet computer. It's an extraordinary advantage. Use it to deliver differentiated value that no one else can. It's just not possible to do it any other way. It's right there for you.
Yeah, it's incredible. And so, yeah, let's dive into some of the audience questions. We've got one here from Maggie Bex. What are the main barriers of adoption of Web3 for global commerce? I mean, that's the purpose of your talk. You're showing a lot of the possibilities and some of the wins, but I mean, it's been a long journey. And I love how you said a different type of 8-year gang, right? Because it's 8 years of hard work, not just 8 years of staking the token. But yeah, what are kind of some of the barriers that you face that other entrepreneurs should be aware of, I guess, as they're building in Web3?
I think you mentioned something important before, Isaac. We've been working very hard to try and present the services through a lens that is more Web2-like. It needs to be familiar experience. Having wallets and managing tokens and signing up for things and putting your keys somewhere and copying them or writing them down or this or that. These are, let's be honest, these are pretty big barriers for mass adoption, right? It's a little bit like the reverse gas model that the DFINITY guys talk about. So, if you're going to industry, then, you talk about the Origin token as an example, right? So it's a true utility token. You use it to mint twins of real world physical objects. The industry player can have the wallet with the tokens in it that get burned down as minting occurs. Their consumers need know nothing about that, need know nothing about a wallet with tokens in it, need know nothing about Origin tokens. Now, it'd be great if they did one day, but it's absolutely not necessary to deliver this value. And so their experience stays closer to what they're familiar with and comfortable with in the Web2 sphere, where you might push out a link via SMS, maybe second factor for security, or through an email. They click on it, a vault pops up. They've just got to connect themselves to it. It's preloaded with their inventory, with their gemstones and all the other value-added service. Would you like some insurance? Would you like to report it lost or stolen? Just click here in this checkbox. It's all stuff they're familiar with, right? So thinking really carefully about how can you save your end users from very cumbersome and unfamiliar experiences with wallets and tokens and things like that. Now, again, on the B2C front, that could be a real differentiator. So I'm not saying that's a place you can't go. Offering content providers and participants a share of value through tokens is a great model. But again, we've got to really think very carefully together about how do you get mass adoption? How long is it going to be before the majority of humans who participate in social networks are going to be okay with receiving tokens? Sounds good, but then where do they put them? How do they manage them? Is the vehicle secure? Is it going to be hacked? Like what? Blah 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 blah. Right? These are all barriers to entry. So these are places we're going to go, and it's going to be fantastic when society understands its immense power. But perhaps look at lower hanging fruit where the user experience can be closer to like a Web 2 familiar experience, and that barrier is just not part of the equation anymore.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times you see Web3 sold as, hey, look, it's this, but it's decentralized, and then in the fine print, it's like, oh, but it's a lot slower, it's a lot harder to use. You have to learn how all these wallet things work, and like it's just not. It's not there yet. And part of the reason I love the IC is because, you can log into a dApp with Google login and not have to pay gas. And those are all great things. But you've taken it even further to where, oh, yeah, you bought like this gemstone. You don't have a wallet or anything else. The supply, like how the gemstone even got to you in the first place, like behind the scenes, Web3 was happening. Like that's even a more powerful answer. Like Web3 has had its influence and added its value to the world before the consumers even got involved. And that's kind of like a whole different like way to see that entire paradigm. So like that's just really cool.
Indeed.
Anything else on this question, or do you want to go on to the next one?
Let's keep going. We probably don't have much time.
Not too much. All right. From Gear, how does Origin ensure the integrity of its digital certificates? I don't think a lot of people know about the kind of mechanics behind it, but it's really cool. So I'd love to hear you share a bit about that.
Sure. So again, we've done a lot of work in the past with hardware, with robots, desktop boxes, the cell phone. I touched on that in the talk, but I also touched on pivoting too. And again, going after that lower hanging fruit. So do you really want to be in the hardware game? Not really. If you have to be, then maybe you do. But when you take a real disciplined criteria-based assessment to where should I play, and you find industries like gemstones where, one organization has 20 labs around the world. They have machines in all of those labs. They already have a very, very well tried and tested process for capturing the data and laser scribing a microscopic identifier on the side of that diamond. And capturing, the weight down to 4 decimal places, 3D dimensions, scanning for inclusions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it is irrefutably allows you to identify and match an item. You capture that, you have a relationship with that organization, you capture that data, you embed it in a tamper-proof digital twin and a next generation NFT running on the internet computer, entirely on chain. Then that can be used again in either a manual by a human, in this case, a semi-automated fashion. We put the gemstone back under the machine, and it'll tell you if those readings are the same or not. And ultimately, we get to the phone where it's coming, and it's coming fast. As I said, we've done quite a lot of work on the phone, and you'll see that that is a picture of an Audemars Piguet watch with this iPhone, the macro lens. Now, you do not need to be a watch expert to re-identify that watch as manually, as a human, as a consumer, if that's in your vault, right? It's going to be automated. Even though any human can do that, this thing is advancing at a rate where you will be able to point your phone at it again, and it will be able to tell you with great confidence whether that is in fact the item that's in your vault or not, right? Or someone's vault sitting next to you that you want to buy it from. So, that's all coming faster than anyone realizes. Computer vision, AI, we all know how fast all that's moving, and that is going to be super commoditized. So there's not a lot of point in putting all of your money and effort into developing that IP as kind of like a proprietary part of your solution. It'll be available to you commoditized to layer on top of the things I just mentioned with the data that you collect.
Okay, great. I mean, it's kind of like a retinal print of a physical object, of like the actual, like what it is itself. So I mean, that's really, I mean, you can't get more solid than that. And I'm the inventor of Untitled. I'm saying, like, that's the highest level that you really get between the digital and physical binding. I think we have time for one more quick question here. And just like the first time I saw your presentation, I'm going to rush off and buy more ORIGYN tokens. So Marcella asked, how does the ORIGYN ensure that it's aligns with the interest of its token holders? So, like, how does the connection of the token play into all this?
That's a great question. So we've been working very hard lately to update our tokenomics, and there's some information about that being distributed now that you can find. We've just released a new dashboard to give full transparency of everything going on with the token, how many there are, and how many is being burned, and how much the foundation has, et cetera, et cetera. So we are doing everything possible to be the cleanest, most transparent managed token that we possibly can be, and to progressively implement more and more token holder governance in terms of what happens with the protocol and the platform, and what its priorities are next. And that will pleasingly also involve industry participants who will increasingly play a role in governance as well, not just some of our token holders in the community. And that's great because, it's funny. We talk about for years and years going to users and gathering requirements and writing them down and all that sort of good stuff. All the while, it's kind of ironic that now we're getting to this point where if the users of the system have tokens which allow them to participate in governance, and 80% of them tell you, I want this feature, and if we implement it all next, I'm going to use this platform more and love it more, then what more do you want?
Yeah.
Developer, right? You know exactly what you need to do next, and why wouldn't you implement that governance regime in your platform? And that's, again, something the internet computer underpins beautifully, like no other layer one. So there's another reason for you to build on it.
Wow. Well, you've really just amped up my energy level for getting through this bear market. I think that I hope you've done the same for the audience. I think you have. And we have a few quick wrap-up items here. For those of us who are on the ambassador program, your keyword today is simply ORIGYN. And for everyone watching, be sure to like and subscribe. Next week, we've got the incredible Jordan Lass of Demergent Labs. He's the one who made TypeScript and Python languages that you can use to build on the internet computer. So that's next Thursday, the 21st at 5 p.m. CET. And, be sure to definitely check out more about ORIGYN. They have some huge announcements coming up in a few weeks, as he alluded to. He can't share it all yet, but in a few weeks, so make sure you're following, if not already. Also, about an hour from now, we're going to be doing an X Space. They're going to be talking about the ETH ICP integration. It's going to be a really fun time. We've got some great panelists, so go follow me on X and my recent tweets. You'll see the link for the space there. But Mike, thank you so much for the time today. I really think this was one of my favorite live streams that we've done in this series. Frankly, I think this was much needed, but just for the ecosystem as a whole. And so, yeah, thanks for sharing a lot more about ORIGYN. I can't wait to see what's coming out in the future. And everyone else out there, thank you so much for joining. Fight the FUD and stay bullish. See you in a bit.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.